Welcome to Booze and Bourbon, a podcast where we talk about all things paranormal, and bourbon too. Now, here are your two ghostess hostesses with the mostest, Kim and Jen.
Welcome to Booze and Bourbon. I am your co-host, Kim.
And I am Jen.
Hello, Jen. How are you?
Oh, just dandy. And how are you?
I'm great. We have so many fun, exciting things on the horizon right now, so I'm just super pumped.
Me as well.
Yeah, so everybody just celebrated Halloween, and we really wanted to extend Halloween. So we decided we're going to do something that I know Jen personally loves. She loves getting scared.
Sure do.
So we actually got scared ourselves not that long ago. We went to this haunted house. Mm-hmm. It was like Dracula's castle or something, and it was in downtown Dartmouth. And we went to go listen to a local author named Steve Vernon talk about some of his local ghost stories, which was really great. Mm-hmm. But then Jen sees that there's a haunted house.
Well, yeah.
And she really wanted to go, and I was pretty hesitant.
Yes, but it's just one of those things you have to do. Like, it's one of those, you're in Dartmouth, and we don't really have that many exciting things going on all the time, so why not?
Right. So we pay for our entrance, and guess what? I send Jen in first. And there were points where we didn't know where we were supposed to go, and I would push on Jen to push on doors, and I would hold Jen's jacket throughout the entire thing. I was such a scaredy cat.
It was almost as if we should have had those little kitty bracelet things where you're attached to each other, and then you could have just followed through that way. Because again, it's more of my eyesight that's the problem. So when it's already dark to begin with, I can't really see where I'm going. So that made it a little worse.
I'm so glad that you're such a good friend and you let me push you through the whole thing, because I would have probably pooped myself if it hadn't been for you.
Well, Kim, that's just one of those things I would do for you as your friend. I'll just guide the way through haunted houses and forests and whatnot.
Thank you. Yes, very much appreciate it. So I guess today is Halloween Boxing Day, by the way. The day after.
Where you have leftover candy and you get to indulge in whatever you have left, if you have anything left.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wonder if there's some good Halloween decor sales on at Michael's and other stores.
This is the best time to get costumes and or decorations, yes.
True. Okay. Maybe we'll be hitting up a store later today. Who knows? But we do sincerely hope that everybody had so much fun yesterday and the weekend before. We are just wrapping up all of the fun times from Oak Island. So we do have that episode airing really soon. So it's really exciting because we can't wait to share all of the fun with you. So as I mentioned before, today's topic, we're talking about some legit feelings here. It's the feeling of being scared. Endorphins plus dopamine are what the chemical reactions are that happen in your body when you get scared. So Jen, you love that.
I do.
Some of us actually pay for this feeling with haunted houses, horror movies, haunted corn mazes, and torture tourism.
Yes.
Totally right up your alley, Jen.
Absolutely.
And recently, too, it's kind of funny because we've been talking about this kind of thing for a little while, and this stuff's in the news right now, too. And what do we call him? Our godfather of the ABV network, Steve Akeley.
Yeah.
He sent us a picture just the other day, and it was a sign that read, St. Thomas Satanic Exorcism near Bardstown, Kentucky, Wednesday, August 7th. And it said, all the fried chicken you can eat for 50 cents. Served from 5 to 8 p.m. I mean, that's the type of thing that really lures people in. I mean, maybe they don't really want to see an exorcism, but 50 cent all you can eat chicken, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But in reality, this photo was actually photoshopped from an actual sign that was from, I think, 1940. And it read something about a picnic supper and Bible thumping. So it was totally wrong. But it's definitely not as exciting as the Photoshop version.
No. But you know what? Next time we go to a haunted house, I feel like there should be snacks involved. So maybe they should have some sort of offering
Like all you can eat donaires?
Or something. Like you get a treat at the end. Like when you complete your mission, you get some sort of snack.
Well, funny enough, there's this one haunted house that we're going to talk about today that if you manage to get through, you get 20 grand.
I know. I'm so excited. Like I need to be there at some point in my life. I need to go.
Oh my God, you're crazy. Just wait till we get into this story. You might think otherwise.
True.
Anyway, we've got this lovely bourbon here in front of us. Actually, it's not technically a bourbon. It's got a bourbon mash bill. It is called Clyde Alabama style whiskey. I picked this ditty up when I was in New Brunswick, our neighboring province. I don't think they have this actual one here at our liquor store, but it's a pretty bottle. So Jen, I'll let you do the cork popping.
Perfect.
Nice.
Ooh, little echo to it.
Yeah.
Has a good scent already.
I have tried this one before, so I'm super pumped for you to try it as well. These are the facts behind this whiskey. Clyde Mays is an Alabama-style whiskey made in Kentucky. It's made with a bourbon mash bill of 55% corn, 30% rye, and 15% barley. This is aged for 5 to 6 years in American oak barrels, charred American oak barrels. And the Alabama style actually comes from the addition of apple juice, resulting in hints of apple and cinnamon.
Yeah, you can definitely smell it.
I can too. Although it still very much smells like a bourbon, but you can definitely smell some apple-y goodness like you're at an orchard.
Yes, just like warm apple pie.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting mix, but it's good. It's a good mix.
It is because it's smooth and it's like pretty easy to drink. It's not overpowering. But one thing I notice is it doesn't really heat up the old bourbon pocket.
No, maybe that's that apple juice just kind of like bringing it down a notch so you're not getting that instant warmth in there.
Maybe. I mean, there is a bit of warmth, but it's definitely not like our traditional warmth. So I do like it. It's easy to drink. It has a really nice color to it. It's nice and dark and rich. Looks like fall in a glass.
Fall in a glass, yeah.
Fall in a glass. All right. Well, way to go, Clyde Mays. This is a perfect fall bourbon. That's my thought.
Yep.
Okay. So what's cool about the next segment of this podcast today is we've been asking you guys for listener would you rather questions.
Yes.
And we got some.
I'm kind of delighted to actually.
Yeah, I am too. I'm giving you the first one, Jen.
Okay, good.
Would you rather have teeth for fingernails or fingernails for teeth?
Oh, well. Going with the aesthetic look of the squared off fingernail, which kind of looks like the shape of a tooth in a way.
Yes.
I'd probably just go with the teeth for fingernails because they look pretty much similar.
You could paint them.
I could paint them. They might be a little tougher because they're teeth, so I wouldn't break them as often.
That is so true.
Yeah.
I like it. Good one, Jen.
Thanks. Just really put some thought into that one. All right. So my question, would you rather be locked in all night at the McKamey House in San Diego?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Or the old jailhouse in St. Augustine, where you are allowed to record the podcast, but then get locked in for the night. Side note, you are allowed these 4 items: flashlight, cell phone, a pillow, and a bottle of bourbon.
Oh, my God. Well, I know that if I was allowed to take a friend, clearly I would be taking you.
Yes.
And I would base that decision on going to the old jailhouse for multiple reasons. Mm-hmm. You do have a thing for old crusty ghost jailbirds.
I do, yes, I do. It's known.
And I get to bring items with me, so a flashlight and a cell phone and a pillow and a bottle of bourbon. It kind of sounds like a ghost hunter's paradise, to be honest.
It does, yeah. You don't normally get all those things included, so
I love it.
I think it's a great deal.
Sorry, McKamey House. We're coming to the old jailhouse in St. Augustine, Florida.
And then we can get a tan after. It's warm there.
Absolutely. Amazing. Okay, so guys, just after the break, we're going to get into today's stories, which is endorphins plus dopamine equals scared. Stay tuned.
All right, guys, welcome back. So, as Kim mentioned earlier, we are going to get into some fun, I think they're fun, tourist attractions for those of us that like to, get those endorphins going and get scared.
Yeah.
So, you may have and probably have heard of our first story very recently featured on a documentary called Haunters on Netflix. The McKamey House is one hell of a terrifying house. This place has been popping up all over the news these days with headlines saying that you can receive $20,000 to make it through this haunted house, but you need to sign a 40-page waiver first. It's not because this house is apparently haunted that makes dark tourists sign up to go into this house, and it's not because something terribly dark happened in the past in this house, but it's because of one twisted guy named Russ McKamey who wants to torture you. It's actually not in his home at all, but in his backyard. He receives tens of thousands of requests by people and personally screens them before they are permitted to enter into the McKamey House. If you want to go in, you also have to be physically and mentally vetted by a doctor prior. His attraction apparently doesn't cost anything except a few cans of dog food that they can later donate. Sounds super fun, right? So Russ, the owner, claims that he has spent well over $500,000 on this location and closer to $1 million when he adds up all of the receipts over the years. He and his wife, he has a wife?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Claim that it is just their savings, but I think there may have been more to this. Maybe it's a dark web kind of thing. Who knows? We like a little spice of conspiracy. We're going to dive a little deeper into this story. Unless you've agreed upon a safe word, there's literally no way for you to end the show. So you have to be tortured until Russ and the crew feel they've broken you and made you submissive. Keep in mind, the torture lasts hours. There was someone in the Netflix documentary that claimed to have been there for 11 hours. Here's the rundown of what people actually sign up to do. To start the fun adventure, people are blindfolded, bound, kidnapped, and thrown into a van and taken to Russ's backyard, or the backyard of his house. People are then stuffed into coffins and locked in, shoved headfirst into toilets, be infested with snakes, waterboarded, and dunked multiple times. If you don't know what the term waterboarding is, like we didn't, Wikipedia says this: waterboarding is a form of torture in which water is poured over a cloth, covering the face and breathing passages of an immobilized captive, causing the person to experience drowning. Normally, water is poured intermittently to prevent death.
Oh, dear God. That's nuts.
So worth it, isn't it? In the documentary, Russ is even seen telling potential actors that they are permitted to shove frogs into people's mouths. Oh, and let's talk about the actors for a second. Some former participants have come back to be actors, but McKamey actually uses ex-cons or former military personnel to populate his home during a terror event. Sure, the line gets a bit sketchy. The willing participants usually have blood and other liquids smeared all over them, and while being shouted at by actors, and as Russ runs around videotaping the whole thing, there are also other cameras set up throughout the attraction. One neighbor decided she didn't want to do it and left before starting, and Russ's wife literally drove, hunted her down, found her in bushes, and forced her back into the house. This sounds like it's right up your alley, Kim.
No, it is not. And I'm like scratching my head wondering how this is up yours.
Upon researching this gruesome tour, we found some articles stating that people claim that worse things take place on the premises than what is seen in the documentary. In one article, a woman was apparently thrown into water with real crocodiles. One person claims that in the waiver you must sign, you are allowing permission to have your teeth ripped out.
Oh, dear God.
Another person claimed that an actor ripped off someone's fingernail, but with their consent, which is the weird part. Another said there is forced vomiting, burying people alive, cutting off hair, and shaving heads. And, stated in the waiver, the possibility of breaking fingers.
Yeah, no, No way. Mm-mm.
Participants claimed to have been drenched in water from the start, making them constantly wet and dropping their body temperature to extremes. People are choked and gagged and nearly suffocated with plastic wrap. This sounds absolutely crazy. I would never want to willingly do that.
Are you sure?
Well, I mean, I'm good with the scaring and stuff, but like when you're like going to pull my fingernails off and potentially like pull my teeth out, or I'm pulling my own tooth out, that's not really worth the 20 grand to me at that point.
Your parents would be like, okay, give me that money back because I spent so much money on your teeth over the years.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty evident that he wavers in the gray zone of legality where he is able to abuse and hurt people with no repercussions. You have to sign a 40-page waiver, and it's important to note that the torture process has already begun prior to signing. Even though it still likely is illegal, nothing is being done about it. It's definitely weird that he's never accepted cash entrance fees, yet he has all the money to spend on this thing. Turns out he served in the Navy for 22 years. Maybe that's where he gets all of his torture tactics from.
Oh, God.
What's strange is that you can tell he likes torturing people in the documentary. He scampers around smirking with his video camera. He talks so much about getting the right shot for his YouTube channel, and that the whole reason he has the attraction is for the videos. All of which could potentially make you wonder or believe if he's profiting off the video somehow and hasn't made the attention solely for horror fans. In a thread on Reddit, someone said that his camera looks like they would be set up for live streaming. Like maybe live streaming on the dark web for profit. Someone else in a thread suggested that it might be live streaming betting, or that he just sells the videos after they are done. This is all speculation. Just seems super strange that he does it for dog food donations, which it really does. Mm-hmm. But there we have it. Dark tourism at its finest.
Jen, that's crazy.
So I just have to add, like, I literally got stuck in like one of those moleholes of like watching all of these videos and like people, I assume it was him videotaping it then, now that I like watched more of them and realized like he obviously is doing the majority of the taping, but like, yeah, I am confused as to how it's possible, because if people are like legit getting like pretty much suffocated, choked, almost drowned, and like potentially like losing teeth and or many other things like their fingers, it's strange to me, like how it's still going. And
I know
people still are very into it. Like they do get lots and lots of people still coming and attempting it. So,
and nobody has gotten the 20 grand yet.
No.
And it's been going on for what? Did you say 11 years?
It can last up like past 10 hours.
Oh,
the whole tour itself is 10 hours ish. Or I guess whenever you make it through. But yeah, I don't know, man. That just seems I like to be scared,
sketchy.
But that's like pushing it on like the Saw side of the movies. Like,
I know. And I hate those movies. I can't watch them.
No.
It just gives me severe anxiety.
yeah.
Oh, anyway. I actually went to school with a guy who's in one of the Saw movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's an actor. He's really cool. Yeah. Okay, well, here's my story.
Okay.
It's the Mortuary House in New Orleans. So this article I found on ghostcitytours.com. So before its infamous time as a funeral home, the Mortuary House was built in 1872 by Irish immigrants Mary Slattery and her husband John Devonshire, who purchased the property from Mrs. Ina M. Hoyle. At the time of its construction, Mary Slattery had hopes of 4800 Canal Street being a family home for the future generation. Part of the land was acquired from the next door cemetery, the Hebrew congregation of which is now known as Hope Mausoleum, spanning nearly 2 or 3 blocks in its entirety, from Cleveland Street to Canal and Anthony to Bernadette. The Greek Revival structure that was erected was considered one of the most beautiful in the area, a perfect portrait of aristocratic New Orleans. By 1880, Mary Slattery and her husband John were living at the mansion with their 6 children and a couple, the Keens, who were good friends. John Jr., as records show, was working as a stonecutter for the Jewish cemetery just steps away from the White Greek Revival. For as far as the Slatterys could see, tombstones were all they could see. While the Jewish cemetery sat to their left, another, now gone, cemetery rested behind them. Not even 2 blocks up the road was Metairie Cemetery, which houses thousands of dead. as the mortuary's owner, Jeff Bourne, was once recorded as saying, "The mortuary is a haunted house in a real haunted house. We're probably in the middle of a million graves within a square mile radius of this building, starting within inches away from the building." It likely made sense that eventually it would turn into a funeral home. In October of 1905, the Slattery residence was sold to Mrs. Laurie LaFontiere and William Clyde. Though it's tough to prove one way or another, it's thought that Mary Slattery and her young daughter died of yellow fever during one of the city's last epidemics. LaFontiere and Clyde kept the property until 1923 before selling it to notary E. Howard McCaleb. From there, in 1928, McCaleb admitted that he'd purchased the property on behalf of P.J. McMahon, and it was at that time 4800 Canal Street was converted into a funeral home. And boy, was that funeral home both magnificently spooky, but also just plain magnificent. By 1959, P.J. McMahon and Sons had added more than a few special features to the property, including an elevator and a garage for sneakily bringing in the corpses away from all seeing eyes of the public. There were smoking parlors for men and extra private rooms for ladies. Private bedrooms were added on to the second floor for grieving families. And if that weren't enough, there were also dining rooms and eat-in areas as well. Enough about the fancy amenities. P.J. McMahon and Sons was also rather advanced when it came to their funeral services. The mansion was also equipped with an autopsy room, an embalming room, an on-site crematorium, and cold storage for the dead, a casket room, and even a flower store. P.J. McMahon & Son was so large, so architecturally astounding, that it is said that the funeral home conducted over 20,000 funerals during its 80-year-long stretch. And if you believe the rumors, the funeral home was able to conduct 8 different funerals all at once. By the 1980s, P.J. McMahon & Sons had merged with the Security Industrial Funeral Home Corporation, and less than a decade later, 4800 Canal Street was sold once again, this time in 1996 to Lowen LA Holdings. According to the various sources, it was during this period that the funeral home began getting rid of a lot of its fascinating additions from the mid-20th century. The 14,000 square foot property soon became way too much to oversee, and the days of 8 funerals at once slowly came to an end. The upkeep of such an operation far exceeded what the management were capable of doing or spending to afford the luxurious status quo P.J. McMahon & Sons had known and offered to generations of New Orleanians. It didn't come to much of a surprise by 2004 that Lowen LA Holdings, at that point known as Alderwoods, was unable to hold on to the funeral home. The whole property was bought out by EHN2 Holdings, or rather the Neal Corporation, which also owns Aveda Spas. The overall plan was to shed the property of its funeral home additives and convert it to an opulent day spa. But in the midst of all of this construction and all of the demolition, Neal Corporation pulled out of the project and out of 4800 Canal Street altogether, leaving the Greek Revival to be a literal shell of its former self. But who was to buy the old funeral home? As you can imagine, someone who would take a look at the property and not see it as a long-haul renovation, but the opportunity to create an attraction that would draw thousands every year. All right, so let's get into the ghost stories of the Mortuary House. On July 2nd, 2007, Jeff Bourne, the owner of PSX Audio Video Technologies, purchased 4800 Canal Street. What was his plan? To convert the old funeral home into the best haunted house attraction that Louisiana, even the South, had ever seen. He intended to open it in time for that same September, leaving the crews only 3 months to finish what Neal Corporation had started. While some may have called Bourne bona fide crazy, there was no stopping him. It was during that 3-month stint that a paranormal investigative group out of LA reached out to Bourne about conducting a hunt at the mansion. They'd heard of the place having some spooky paranormal activity and were interested to learn how operating as a funeral home for 85 years might influence the number of spirits in the place. Hint, it definitely has an influence on the phantom phenomena. Apparently, the paranormal group from LA had so much success that other investigative groups overheard and began reaching out as well to Bourne. Pensacola Paranormal followed up shortly after, and Bourne realized something eerily spectacular. Not only was he the owner of a Halloween time gold mine, but he was actually sitting on a gold mine. In the ex-funeral home that he'd purchased was actually haunted. Following the various paranormal groups who held ghost hunts at the Mortuary house, Jeff Bourne decided to capitalize on the interest. And by that, we mean Jeff Bourne went all out. He set up over 30 cameras all over the mortuary, all the better to capture any strange myths or apparitions roaming the halls. Those cameras included night vision cams, color, and thermal types as well. Bourne was ready to discover just what was haunting the Greek Revival mansion. There are also microphones and audio equipment installed in hopes that a phantom voice might be caught over as an EVP. During the few years of being open, Bourne didn't just stop at operating just as an attraction. The mortuary also offered people ghost tours of the building as well as actual overnight ghost hunts. Unfortunately, the Mortuary house is no longer hosting paranormal investigations or tours, choosing instead to just focus on recently popular escape rooms, which have garnered a lot of fame. So, some of the mystery escape rooms are a serial killer's lair, a fun game room, an embalming room, a zombie escape, a ghost lab, and a pirate treasure hunt. So then over the years, there have been countless ghost stories which have emerged from the mortuary. Countless guests have come forward during the fright time season, which is September to November, to report that they were touched by something unseen while going through the attraction. For the most part, we guess that those feelings guests experience while going through the mortuary can directly be attributed to the house as being an attraction, maybe not necessarily the ghosts. But there are a few that stand out, a few ghost stories that stand out to staff members or guests who've had the luck of running into them. There's the girl ghost and her possible suitor. So a female spirit has been known to haunt the top floor of the building, crying, assumed for a husband who passed away decades ago. It's uncertain if the ghost of a well-dressed man seen on the property is the spirit's husband or if he's an entirely different specter. What can be said about the top hat-clad gentleman is though he's often seen clambering through the cemetery next door, according to local lore, his ghost is only known to appear when people are completely disrespecting the cemetery. So the cemetery, which was established in the 1840s, would give St. Louis Cemetery number 1 a run for its money in terms of disorderliness. There's a lack of pathways. Many of the tombs and headstones lay directly on top of one another. Then some of the other ghosts are the playful ghost and a somber mortician. Other ghosts of the mortuary house are the spirits of 2 young children who enjoy to romp around and play at all manners of the day. They're known to play pranks on the living, as most kids like to do anyway. There's also the former mortician who haunts the property, though his presence and apparition is most commonly seen by employees downstairs in the old morgue. At the time of its construction in 1923, the small area beside the elevator in the basement was used as an old workshop or even an autopsy room. The ghostly mortician has only been spotted down in the basement, but according to those who have seen him, they are more than a little convinced that he's unable to leave his bloody work even after death. Then there's also a few distinct spirits known at the mortuary. For the most part, reports of the former funeral home generally include disembodied footsteps, as well as the whispering of ghosts, though no one is ever there. Sometimes furniture has actually skidded across the floor in full view of shocked employees. The mortuary's ghosts certainly aren't shy whatsoever. Cody McLean, a former employee of the mortuary, but currently the assistant general manager for Hotel St. Pierre and the Andrew Jackson Hotel, told us of a private employee-only investigation that he, the manager Lance, and a friend did a few years ago. They were set up in the Red Theater upstairs, and it apparently wasn't long before the strange occurrences started happening. As Cody explained, it was probably my imagination playing tricks on me, but I walked into the middle of the room and we called for Sarah, the female ghost, allegedly, to come visit us. And that is when Cody felt something grab his wrist. Ooh. Not willing to see what had wrapped their fingers around his wrist, Cody figured it was his cue to leave and bolted. After all, he called out to the female spirit to join them. What are the chances that just that moment he'd be touched by an unforeseen force? Probably pretty slim. So if you are interested in visiting the mortuary house, please be aware that this haunted house is only open during Halloween time. as mentioned earlier, investigations and tours of the property are no longer offered. All of this is pretty interesting because, like I said before, people actually pay for this stuff. But according to one article from 2015, people will actually pay good money to get frightened. And apparently there's at least 5,000 haunted attractions in the US alone. As for the reason why people love getting their pants scared right off of them, Jen, I don't know. Why do you like the feeling of getting your pants scared off of you?
I'm not really sure. I don't really have a good answer for that. Yeah. Must be something with those endorphins. I'm not really sure.
There you go. Okay, so the article says, from a psychological point of view, the standard features of haunted houses trigger feelings of dread because they push buttons in our brains that evolved long before houses even existed. These alarm buttons warn us of potential danger and motivate us to proceed with caution. There you go. Also known as endorphins and dopamine equals scared.
Yeah.
Well, that pretty much wraps up today's episode, but I think we have a would you rather question for our listeners.
Yeah.
Would you rather spend 2 hours in the McKamey House or 2 hours in the mortuary? What would you choose, Jen?
Well, I mean, I'm more down for like the scared of just like ghosts that aren't trying to pull my teeth out and or assault me in some manner. So I'm just going to go.
The living is far scarier than what the dead people are. Yeah.
The ex-cons, even though I, have an attraction to some of those as well. I'm going to go with just the old school ghosts instead. So, yeah.
You're one twisted individual, and I love it.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm just going to pass on the assault side and just go with the general scared part instead.
Agreed. I looked at this mortuary in New Orleans, and it looks really fun. But again, I would have to push you through the entire thing.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all right. We'd still get through it. It would just take us maybe a little bit longer, but it'd be fun.
And I guaranteed would not have a voice the next day, because even after that haunted house that we did a couple of weeks ago, my vocal cords hurt all night.
Oh.
I was screaming so much.
Well, I'm
Such
sure
pussy.
they were they kind of get off on that too. So I'm sure they felt like they did their job then.
Yeah. And Jen, have you discovered what your dream job is?
Well, yeah. So now that I know, guys, that you can just volunteer for this shit, I most definitely feel like next year I'm just going to volunteer to, work in either. I would love to work in the corn maze because I feel like that's more of my thing.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't get to take you there this year, you're definitely going next year.
Okay.
And for those of our listeners that aren't from here, the corn maze is about an hour away from here in Truro. And yeah, it started out as just like a small corn maze that was like a haunted corn maze and has now blown up into like 3 times the size. They have haunted houses at the beginning.
Yep.
You kind of go through more or less, I think it was probably the barn before, but they set it up into like 3 different, we'll call it haunted houses instead. And you go through those first, and then you get to go through the corn maze, which has, guys with chainsaws chasing you and random people dressed up like, I don't know what, but I thoroughly enjoy the corn maze. It's more my thing. You get a little bit more activity because you're walking more. If you feel like you need to leave, they do still have like kind of the safe word thing. You actually get to buy, I think it's a pass, like almost like at that haunted house we went to, where you can get a pass that's like ghosts. Well, the actors aren't allowed to scare you necessarily. So
yeah, it basically says, I'm a huge pansy, don't scare me.
Right. So you can get those passes, Kim. So you would be fine. I won't get one, but you can still follow behind me. And I think it would be great.
I think this is a good time to mention, too. This just reminded me of when we were standing in line buying our tickets for that haunted house. And I was really eyeing up that one sticker that you could buy for, I think it was like $3. So it's like the Don't Scare Me sticker. And out of the corner of our eye, we see this ginormous man, and he's there with his kids, and he's like, I need to buy the sticker.
Yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, it's everybody can have, the way they can just experience it the way that they want to experience it. So
yes, exactly. I love it. All right. So now it's about time for our patron shoutouts.
Yeah.
So if you want to become a patron and get some behind the scenes footage, also exclusive content like Jen's ex-bartending recipes and more, you could head on over to patreon.com/booze and bourbon. We love it. We are having so much fun with the Patreon page. And so there's 2 tiers. They start at $5. The highest tier goes up to $10. You get some more exclusive stuff with the $10 tier. So just head on over, check it out. So, Jen, who do we have on our patron shout out list?
Well, we have Rebecca, we have Stephanie, we have Aaron, and another Aaron. Both spelled differently, I might add.
Yeah.
Aaron with an E, Aaron with an A. We have the ABV Network and the Ghost Story guys, and we appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
We do. Thank you guys so much. You are really helping the show get better and better. So we can't thank you guys enough. So Jen, also, if people want to follow us, they want to check out our crazy adventures, where can they find us?
You guys can find us on our Instagram page, Booze and Bourbon, on Facebook, Booze and Bourbon, the podcast. Of course, you can listen to us on any of your typical podcast adventures like iTunes and Stitcher. I believe Spotify as well. And I think that's about it.
Amazing. And also, we just did a Halloween episode that dropped yesterday on our brand new friends podcast, which is amazing. They're also from our province, and Jen actually knows them, and I got to meet them for the first time, which was so much fun. They are amazing. So if you want to hear our Halloween episode with them, they are Rival and Queen, and you can find them anywhere podcasts live too. So go check that episode out and subscribe, because they are 2 lovely ladies in their 30s, and they're talking about pretty much anything and everything, and have some very cool special guests.
Yes,
like
for
us.
sure.
Duh.
And now they like bourbon too, sort of.
I know. It's
We're
so
working
great.
on them. They're close.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Anyway, thanks so much for listening today, guys. And make sure you stay tuned, because real soon we're going to have that amazing Oak Island episode drop. So
Thanks, guys.
bye.
Booze and Bourbon is part of the ABV Network. For more information or to advertise on the show, please head over to abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and cheers.
This has been a Steve Akeley production.